Hello and welcome back to Miss Hannah Loves Grammar. In this video I'll be concentrating on the theme of revenge and its relationship with justice across the tragic play Macbeth by William Shakespeare. So revenge is hurting or harming someone in return for an injury or wrong they caused you. At the start of the play, Macbeth is promoted because the previous Thane of Cawdor was a traitor, and in revenge, and as a mark of his voice of justice, King Duncan seeks for this traitor to be executed. Yet, by the start of Act 2, it is King Duncan who is wrongfully murdered at the hands of Macbeth, and his children Malcolm and Donalbain are both anxious, stressed, worried for their own lives, and ultimately deeply disturbed. Yet it's Malcolm, the rightful heir to the throne, who seeks justice in the form of revenge and seeks to kill Macbeth. By Act 3 we know that Banquo is dead, and he seeks his own revenge on his former best friend in the banquet scene of Act 3, Scene 4. Macduff also loses his family and seeks revenge on his personal sufferings. He's persuaded of such in Act 4. And it's actually setting up what the witches predict, that Macbeth's downfall will be at his hands. In an age and a time where dynasties and bloodlines were the natural right and reign to monarchy, it's interesting that Macbeth's power obsession with these bloodlines creates the need for revenge and justice. And this is equally bound with the unnatural nature of his deep desires that are both black and deeply ambitious in their own selfish right. Contextually, this would have been sound. People in the audience of Jacobean times, at least, would have understood that justice was bound to virtue and revenge was needed to honour victims and God's will. And it's fascinating that in just a year before this play was first performed, so 1605, Guy Fawkes's men attempted to assassinate King James. And so this play, performed in 1606 for the first time, is really respectfully showing King James and others in the audience that those who act in a disrespectful fashion to use their own ambition and not follow the code as laid out by the great chain of being, God and the divine right of kings, they need to be dealt with. And if that means revenge, so be it. The first instance of treachery is narrated by King Duncan himself in Act 1, Scene 2. And he's talking of how his enemy, the King of Norway, was assisted by that most disloyal traitor, the Thane of Cawdor. One of his own men is now referred to as a most disloyal traitor. The superlative most alongside the negative adjective disloyal, such a loaded term for a king to share, signals his frustration, his disappointment, and anger that one of his own could do this to him. The connotations of the noun traitor, when said by the virtuous King Duncan, serves to highlight once more the manner and nature of criminality for one to go against their king. I wonder if Shakespeare is ironic in the way that Macbeth is promoted. He's promoted from the Thane of Glamis to the Thane of Cawdor, to the same role as this previous Thane who did wrong. Is this meant to act as a cue for us as audience members to question the judgment of each man who acts in this role? Is it a test to their nature? The language of King Duncan when he's talking to the Thane of Ross about what must happen next is very powerful also. No more that Thane of Cawdor shall deceive our bosom interest. Go pronounce his death, and with his former title greet Macbeth. And whilst it's true that Thane of Cawdor shall no longer deceive their bosom interests, the next Thane of Cawdor will deceive. The verb deceive is so potent, much like traitor and disloyal. These words are loaded. They're deceptive words. They heighten villainy. And that's what Macbeth will become. Our bosom interest, that purity of the closeness of interest that is sought when you're doing what's right, And yet we learn that revenge is the name of the game. We learn that the previous Thane of Cawdor is to be murdered. And that's a way of reconciling that he has done wrong, to perform the act of justice. So here we have Macbeth's confession to killing the Chamberlains in Duncan's room. He says, "Oh, yet do repent me of my fury that I did kill them." He uses the religious verb repent, pleading with those hearing him that this was just an act of impulsive revenge to fight for justice. They should be able to understand his virtue in doing so. His impassioned first person and even possessive use of "my fury, I did kill" bind together his rage and consider murder here as natural repercussions to the injustice of Duncan being killed. The truth is, though, this is actual villainy. The deception is the way that he tries to sidetrack his true villainous action of murdering Duncan. We know there will be consequences, that desire for revenge will be high upon that realisation coming to light. And here we are in Act 3, Scene 4. Macbeth has just had the public humiliation of Banquo's ghost greeting him and sitting at his throne. And this phrase, "it will have blood," they say blood will have blood, he's talking to Lady Macbeth. And it's a phrase, a murder avenges another murder. That idiom that was used a lot at the time is a bit like today when we say what goes around comes around. Macbeth's repeating the idea that the dead will have their revenge. And it seems as if Banquo's already done that. He's seen Banquo's bloody ghost, and the repetition of the noun blood serves to accentuate Macbeth's sense of guilt and his conscience in operation. A bit late, you might say. Speaking to Lady Macbeth in this way is disturbing for her, and it's clear that he's losing his grip on reality. Macbeth understands that Banquo has sought vengeance for his murder, but it's interesting, the question remains for us, was this just a figment of Macbeth's imagination? Directors can stage this as they see fit. Many choose not to have an actual ghost come on the stage, but Shakespeare is clear with us. There is a mention of a ghost that enters or exits. In Act 4, Scene 3, we encounter Malcolm persuading Macduff to join forces with him and take on Macbeth. Now, each of them have their reasons to trying to bring down Macbeth. Malcolm has lost his father, King Duncan, and as a consequence, his rightful place as next in line to the throne. It is, and should be, his for justice to be done. And Macduff has lost his whole family to Macbeth's rage and murder. So when Malcolm says, "Be this the whetstone of your sword, let grief convert to anger, blunt not the heart, enrage it," we encounter the persuasive style of this leader, and we understand why Malcolm should be next in line to the throne. His leadership style is sure. The image of the whetstone of your sword is potent. A whetstone is a sharpening stone that's used with your sword to get you ready for battle. The imperatives that Malcolm uses accentuate his role as the voice of justice in place of his father. Let grief do this, blunt not that. It's his rightful place to be giving that advice. He pushes Macduff to see how his loss needs to fuel his anger. The strength of those verbs, convert and enrage, further stress his desire for revenge to be sought, for justice to be found. Shakespeare ensures across this scene that we see Malcolm as honourable and tactical. Initially, he's concerned that Macduff might want the throne and is cautious about revealing his true colours until he trusts Macduff's intentions. And it's fascinating when we unpick what Macduff says. "Put him within reach of my sword, and if he escapes, may heaven forgive him as well." Here we understand the power of his weapon. His sword will get revenge, and only if Macbeth escapes will he need heaven to forgive him. It's a sure thing. Macbeth is going to hell, and justice isn't just from these men, it's from God too. Why not subscribe to Miss Hannah Loves Grammar for all things English, literary and grammatical?